And welcome back to page 4. At the top of page 4, they wanted us to find the slope of the line. We're not going to be able to do that until we put the equation in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. Yet another formula you're going to have memorized. So in order to do that, I start out with my 2x minus 11y is equal to 3. I have to get the y completely by itself. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. It's going to give me negative 11y is equal to negative 2x plus 3. You cannot combine those because they are not like terms, so make sure you're careful about that. Dividing everything by negative 11 will allow me to have the y by itself because they'll cancel out, and that gives me a positive 2 over 11x minus 3 over 11. Now they specifically asked for the slope of the line. They didn't want the whole equation. All they want is the slope. So make sure you only tell them the slope of the line. They're very specific about what they ask, so you have to be very specific about what you tell them. In number 14, if you'll remember from the previous page, since it says x equals a number, doesn't matter what the number is. Since it says x equals a number and there is no y in it, that means this has to be an undefined slope. Likewise, since this says y equals a number, this is going to have to be a zero slope. There are things that you need to memorize. If you memorize the clouds, you'll be fine. If you don't memorize the clouds, you're going to have a problem. Make sure you memorize those clouds. Problem number 16 is actually a little cautious. They specifically ask for the rate of change, which means you have to do something very specific for it. So finding a rate of change is just like the slope. So you start with your m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I really do put the 6153.8 minus the 3076.9. Be really careful when you're writing these numbers. I don't know if you can see it on this paper, but you can definitely see it on your paper that you printed out. The decimal point actually falls on that line, and if you're not careful, you won't know that there is a decimal point there. So please be careful about things like that. Divided by, on my bottom I'd have my 8,000 minus my 4,000. So on top, you use your calculator, you can get that this is 3076.9 over the 4,000. And typically, I would tell you that you need to reduce this. However, they specifically said that they wanted a rate of change. Being they want the rate of change, that means you need to actually stick this in your calculator and find a decimal answer for it. That's what rate of change means. They want a decimal answer. So when I do that, I get 0.769225. Now, that is not the answer that they are looking for, however. That's just the math work. They actually want to know what that number means, so you'll have to go back and look at some things. They tell you in the problem that y is in dollars, so that means that all my top numbers are money, and that x is the number of miles driven, so all my bottom numbers are miles. So if all my top numbers are money, and all my bottom numbers are miles, that means that over here, this is per 1 mile, just like having a 1 at the bottom of our fraction. So when I go to write this, this top number must still be in my money, so that looks like it's 76 cents to me, 0.769225 over miles. Only when we talk about money, that's not how we round our money. Money is always round to the nearest cent. So that means 2 decimal places. So I need to go ahead and make this only 2 decimal places. So when I round to 2 decimal places, I look at the 9 and see it sends the 6 up to a 7. So that's 77 cents per mile. Be careful about the words rate of change. Problem number 17 looks like it's a fairly simple problem. We won't have any problem with it, but I'm going to draw a picture anyway. It says that there's a rise of 30 feet over a run of 50 feet, And they want you to find the grade of the ramp. Well, you do that by finding the slope. So we just put the 30 over the 50, and we end up with 0.6, and then they say to the nearest whole percent, so that means we have to change it to a percent, which is going to make it our 60%. Relatively simple, correct? However, there's a problem. On your test, these two are not the same. They have to be the same. On your test, one of them is going to be in feet and one of them is going to be in inches. You need to make sure they are the same before you do any calculations. These calculations only work if they are the same. So when it comes time for you to change your feet to inches, which is what you should do, you should always default to the smallest unit. So when you have to change your feet to inches, just understand that you need to change your feet by saying 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. So if they, for example, tell you 30 foot, you say 30 times 12 is going to equal our 360 inches. Now, I don't know what it is in the test. I don't know which test you're going to get, so I couldn't possibly predict which one it is you're going to need. However, I will say you need to make sure you multiply your feet by 12 so you can get them both in inches before you start throwing it in. Also, make sure you read to know where you need to round to. Okay, that should be enough caution for this page. Problem number 18. They want you to graph the linear equation using slope-intercept form. We talked about how slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, and this is already in y equals mx plus b. Now we get to use the information about rise over run to help us graph. So this says that we need to start at 8 for our y-intercept. So I go up to 8 on my y-axis, and I put my dot. And then my slope is equal to 1 over 6. So that is 1 up and 6 over. And technically my over is always right. The only time I ever don't go right is when my bottom number is negative, and that never ever happens. So I would go up 1 and over to the right 6 and put my dot. Then you need to connect your dots. Once again, failure to connect those dots is something that I'd have to count off for. Make sure you also put arrows on the dot. There's no need to do it again unless you just feel like you want to. Any questions is normally what I would ask, but since you can't ask it right now, I'm just going to say continue on with page number 5.